Okay, so we're going to look at a lot of graphics today and talk about the graphics, and I'll ask you questions about the graphics, but these will also be available on the slide on the PowerPoint online, so you can answer study questions and that sort of thing, which might show up again on quizzes and exams. Okay? So, marine fisheries. First question, what's the first one? The type of fish in terms of the top value or top volume. Here's the answer, sort of. And this is from data from 2015, so it's not exactly super new. But number one, pollock, which is sometimes you'll see it referred to as walleye, but that's just confusing, more confusing to me because walleye is a freshwater perch, right? Which actually tastes fantastic, but it's not called for commercial perch. Well, it might be in the Great Lakes. But pollock in this case is similar to cod and haddock. Haddock is another one. Pollock, it's basically the staple for a lot of the processed fish food products that we have, like, Van de Kamp's battered fish, or fish sticks or whatever you have. It's a white fish. But it's very abundant, and it's the primary fish species in terms of volume that comes from Alaska. Cold water. It comes from other parts too. Menhaden, what are menhaden? That's number 2 in volume. Used to be number 1 in volume, pretty much. Menhaden are like part of the mullet family, I think. They're primarily used for 2 purposes. One, bait fish and food fish for aquaculture, and number 2, fertilizer, plant food. And then salmon, somebody guessed salmon. That's a really, really big one, of course. And this is wild caught salmon. And then on down the line, cod. So cod, and then flatfish and hake, those are both flounder-looking things, but they're more related to cod. And then shrimp, that's a Gulf Coast thing, right? And crabs of all kinds, but especially Pacific crabs, and especially Alaskan king crabs, and on down. So that's in volume, but in thousands or in revenue or value. Lobster, number 1. Where do we get lobsters? Maine, New England, yeah. And then crab, shrimp, salmon's still up there in terms of value. Pollock's not too bad. And then things that don't, there's not a huge volume at all for things like scallops and oysters, but these are, of course, shellfish, and they're high-value shellfish. So the clams, scallops, as well as cod, those are pretty much all New England-based fisheries. So they're coming out of the North Atlantic. Oysters, let's see. So I said what? Lobsters, scallops, cod, flatfish, clams from New England. From the Gulf Coast, shrimp and oysters, mostly. Okay. So anyway, just some pretty much, these are these are the higher value. The higher value stuff is mostly from New England. All right, some trends in commercial landings. This is North Atlantic fish, so these would be cod and hake, flatfish especially. So in recent years, it fluctuates obviously, but in pounds, it seems to, in the last decade, seems to have really come down suddenly. This is North Atlantic only. Okay? Now look at what's going on in the value. The value has gone down for a lot of these fish. Actually, value's gone up. You notice that value's gone up. So that's based on the market price. Market price has gone up. Supply has gone down. Shrimp, on the other hand, look at what shrimp has done over there. This is commercial shrimp, but look what has happened to the value of shrimp just between like 2014 and 2015. Wonder why that is. All right, here's the use of fish that are brought into United States ports as United States catch. And you can see 3/4 of the total catch is for fresh or frozen fish, for your supermarket shelf or supermarket meat counter. And another 17% goes into things like fish meal, which is basically fertilizer, as well as oil. And then you have the animal food market, both fresh, frozen, that real expensive stuff, and canned cat food. But a lot of the fish catch, salmon in particular, is canned. Tuna, most of the tuna is imported, but salmon and tuna, I suppose, are highest there. Okay, so that's really no surprise. All right, now, you probably can't read that from where you are, but we'll try to highlight some of this stuff. The graph or the table that you see is United States domestic landings by region and by state for 2014 and 2015. So that you can see there are regions here like New England, the Middle Atlantic states, South Atlantic, Gulf states, Pacific Coast, which include Alaska as well as Washington, Oregon, California, and then the Great Lakes, which of course is freshwater, but still contribute to some of the catch. And then within those regions, you have states, but what you're looking at here is in thousands of pounds. So this is volume, and this is $1,000. So New England's 2014 catch was estimated to be at about $2.19 billion. Right? Compare that to Alaska. Down here. Alaska's catch, of course, in terms of poundage, a lot bigger. $1.7 billion for Alaska, and that it's about 1.8 billion over here in 2015. So higher value. It depends. It's a mix on Alaska. All right, and then the thing I really wanted you to see is this. The record landings for each state by year. And look at this. Here's like for Maine, 1950. It's a record in terms of poundage. New Hampshire, I don't know what's going on there. But most of New England reached their peak in the first half. Generally the first half of the 20th century. A few other places like New York, New York's catch peaked in 1880. Maryland's catch peaked in 1890. But again, a long time ago they peaked. The only thing that's peaking recently is down here, the Pacific. So the Alaska catch in 2015, and this is from 2015, that was a record catch with 6 billion pounds. So we have obviously these are pretty viable, but pretty much the Gulf Coast is even experiencing decline last several decades. Okay, so which U.S. how would you answer these? Which U.S. coastal region or regions are most important in terms of marine fisheries revenue? So you go Pacific Coast and New England, right? Pretty much. Which U.S. states are most important in terms of marine fisheries revenue? Sure, Alaska, Maine, Massachusetts, Louisiana, of course. Louisiana, Alaska. Those are where the fishing industry is pretty much based out of certain ports within those states. Which states have which states and regions have experienced the largest declines in the fisheries? Well, it's hard to say the largest necessarily. New England and the Middle Atlantic for sure, although parts of the South Atlantic would really experience declines early on. Now, if you look at the Pacific Coast, notice this. You've got Alaska, Washington, and Oregon. All three of those usually considered to be the Northwest. And then California. Somebody said California is probably one of the leading fisheries, and it used to be. But California reached its peak in 1936, and it's for its amount of coastline in California, it's relatively unimportant these days. Or it's far less important than it used to be. So what explains the differences in tonnage and revenue? Well, the type of fish that are caught. So, all right. Commercial fishery. Here's a graphic that's a lot easier to maybe to interpret. You're looking at some of the major ports here. See that largest one. Let's see. That largest one, I believe, is it's in Massachusetts. It's just east of Rhode Island. It's in southern Massachusetts. What's the name of that city? It's the city that is mostly associated with Portuguese immigration back in the early 20th century, which kind of makes sense because the Portuguese are major fishermen folks. It's southern Massachusetts. No, not Boston. It's the home of Emeril Lagasse. Emeril Lagasse is, you might think of he's associated with New Orleans, but he actually grew up in this port city in South Massachusetts. What is it? No. Fall River. Is that it?
Just says Fall River, it doesn't say.
Maybe. Let me cheat.
Fall River is serviced by the
Bedford. New Bedford. That's it. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, that's a real important fishing port. Oh, here we go. New Bedford. Wait, Actually, lived before class. New Bedford, Dutch Harbor, Alaska, Aleutian Islands, Kodiak, Alaska, Big Isle. And then you have some of these other ones like South Louisiana, but Alaska is an exporter of a lot of things, but Alaskan crab, snow crab, and then a lot of we talked about pollock. But it's also an exporter of it's pretty much the sole source of halibut, which is a very high value whitefish. Aquaculture. Look at this. So aquaculture in the United States is represented by blue bars. And you can see since 1994. Okay, that's quite a while back, 25 years ago. Aquaculture hasn't really expanded very much in the United States. It's pretty much static. While fish catch has generally gone up over the last 20 years. Right? So fish catches are going up, aquaculture is pretty much staying the same. From a conservation standpoint, how would you assess that? Is that a good thing? Oh, and this is by value as well. Not catch by value. Right. It depends on the management, right? And the management of the different fisheries. All right. Now this answers your question about where does the United States stand in terms of aquaculture. And the fact of the matter is, look at that. America. Basically nil compared to the rest of the world. Even Europe does this. Okay. So anyway, we have the vast majority of aquaculture is in Asia, China, as well as Southeast Asia, and Japan. Nearly 90% of the entire world's production is Asian. So aquaculture is something that the Asians know how to do and do well. And of course, a lot of the aquaculture in Asia is the source of our imported seafood in the United States. Almost all of, large majorities of shrimp, for example, these days come from Southeast Asia and China. But it goes to different uses. So, canned tuna and other types of oily fishes. Makes up about 11%. Then you have the frozen as well as the fresh marketed stuff. A lot of the so-called fresh is actually frozen anyway. All right. Now this is kind of the giveaway. So this is the trade and basically balance of trade. Here's North America. We've got very much a deficit. Yes, correctly. We export some, but look how much we import twice that, three times practically. So we are major importers. Asia, on the other hand, does still import a lot, and its trade balances. They're doing lots of aquaculture as well, but that's a market that's still growing. Europe, pretty much balanced, and Africa, Oceania are not major markets yet. Now, if you look at this graph, this is edible fish products, imports, exports for the United States over time. Notice that our trade balance is getting smaller and smaller as basically we're becoming more and more dependent on imported seafood products. And our own production, our exports are pretty much plateaued recent years. imports of
edible
edible
fishery products.
So
where do we get?
Where are most of the imported fish coming from? Of course, Canada.
That's gonna
That's basically the same as
the New England fishery, but
lots of imports from Thailand, Vietnam. These are going to be a lot of shrimp, but a lot of vessels will sail under the Indonesian flag in Thailand, and they may be catching tuna in the high seas. So anyway,
and in
China, a lot of aquaculture from China. Now, one problem with this data is that there are a lot of American vessels catch fish, but they don't get counted in the United States catch. Why is that? Because the labor in processing fish is often outsourced. Okay? So a lot of the United States fisheries, marine fish catch actually is sent overseas. Right? It's sent to China, Thailand, where it is processed and then re-exported back to the United States. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, the same thing happens with chicken.
Imports
by
of
the
canned
way.
tuna.
Where do we get Arkansas?
Arkansas is a major.
A lot of the
producer
tuna, of course, is
poultry,
not
right?
something that's farmed.
Okay.
Is it? I don't think that's even
A
possible.
lot of the
unless it's
production
in,
of poultry
is
It might be
global.
possible.
So I mean,
Not sure.
they send different
Anyway, so
parts
we have,
to different locations.
Thailand's a
In the
major
United States,
supplier.
It's
Philippines,
breast meat.
These are basically the flags that
what's in
different
demand
vessels
for
fly in.
places like Salem, Chick-fil-A, and Cane's, and all that stuff.
Tuna farming?
Yeah, where they
So where would they do that?
off fast food market.
Off the coast of,
legs and the thighs.
Would have to be
I guess wings
large
and breasts
area.
would wind up in the United
Japan.
States.
Well, that makes sense.
Thighs and legs, dark meat, gets
Thank you.
exported to China.
And this is where you get your
China,
shrimp.
They make them into chicken McNuggets and send them back to us.
All right, well,
I don't know about that.
move on here.
I don't think there is any chicken.
Here are your top 5 states by volume.
All right, so
and top
imports
5
of
states
canned
by
tuna.
value. Alaska,
Where do we get it from? So like Thailand,
Thailand lobsters,
a lot of
Massachusetts
and tuna, of course, is not
Louisiana
something
shrimp.
that's farmed.
And
I don't
then
think that's even possible.
Washington, which is probably mostly working in Alaskan waters. It might be possible, not sure.
Anyway,
Worry about
so we have
regulation. Landings.
Thailand's a major
All right, this is
supplier.
some interesting
Philippines
stuff.
Americans
These are
consume basically the
almost
flags
5 billion
that
pounds
vessels
of
fly
seafood
under or sail under.
So we're the second largest consumer
Tuna
of
farming?
seafood after China.
So where would they do that? I mean,
Most
off the
fish
coast
caught in the
of,
United States is consumed as seafood,
wouldn't have to be
and a little over 20%
pretty large area.
is used for other products.
Japan.
like
Okay,
food,
well that
fish
makes
meal,
sense. Makes sense.
Fish oil, pills.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Eyeshadow.
And this is where you get your shrimp. Okay. All right. Well, moving on here. Here are your top 5 states by volume, and top 5 states by value. Alaska, Maine lobsters, Massachusetts lobsters, Louisiana shrimp, and then
A lot of this is kind of
Washington, which is probably mostly.
So what is it? Why is
And Alaskan
the United
waters.
States so far behind in?
Don't worry
fish
about
farming,
recreational
aquaculture?
landings. All right, this is some
And
interesting
aquaculture
stuff.
always
Americans consumed almost 5 billion
choice
pounds
for the
of
environment.
seafood in 2015. So we're the second largest consumer of
Some people say
seafood
no.
after China.
Why?
Most fish caught in the United States is consumed as seafood, and a little over 20% is used for other products like pet food, fish meal, fish oil, pills,
So the farm fish might contribute to
eyeshadow, whatever.
It contributes to a higher demand for the fish.
And here's a 90% of the seafood consumed in the United States is
Well,
imported, measured by
are there
edible weight.
biological reasons why fish farming gets a bad rap, or at least salmon farming? That's what I'm thinking of.
Aquaculture seems like
A lot of this is kind of repetitive. All right.
Concentrated.
So what is it? Why is the United States so far behind in fish farming and aquaculture?
To maximize outputs, and you always get
And is aquaculture always
like excessive nutrient.
a good
loss,
choice
and
for the
actually
environment?
It would kind of be similar. Like, what do you do with? How do you?
Some of y'all say no.
The waste from, like,
Why?
Like, I guess an open ocean pen is what you're thinking.
Yeah. I would worry more about what they're putting in for animals, for fish food. One of the issues with aquaculture is that you're right.
So the farm fish
imports
might
often
contribute to,
or the inputs. The inputs are other fish. So you're catching certain types of certain species of fish,
Well,
processing them, feeding them to higher value fish. And in that sense, you're kind of not really being very.
Aquaculture seems like it would be really similar to the
economical.
like a concentrated.
But there are some. There are some sort of examples where you don't do that. So if you eat tilapia, right? Tilapia is a vegetarian and fast growing. The vast majority, believe it or not, what do you suppose the fish species, freshwater fish species? What is the
I would
most
worry more
common
about what
freshwater
they're
fish
putting in.
species farmed in the world? And that means it's going to be farmed in
One of the
China.
issues with aquaculture is that
Most popular freshwater fish
imports
species farmed in the world.
or the inputs, inputs are other fish.
Trout?
So
No.
you're catching certain types of certain species of fish. processing
Getting
them,
there, you're
feeding
close.
them
It's
to
a
higher
big one.
value fish. And, in that sense, you're kind of not really being.
It's
very,
carp,
uh,
all right? Carp,
economical.
the number one fish.
But there are some,
And that includes, I think that includes common
there are
carp as well as
some sort
grass
of,
carp. Now, I've caught grass
examples
carp
where you don't do that.
Like,
So if you
large
eat
grass
tilapia,
carp.
right?
And I ate
Tilapia
it,
is
and it wasn't too bad.
is a
If you just know how to
vegetarian.
cook it right. But anyway,
Fast
so that's a,
growing one. The vast
Aquaculture,
majority, believe it or
one
not,
issue with-
what do you suppose
with
the
salmon
fish
farming, of
species,
course, is that
freshwater fish species? What is the most common freshwater fish species farmed in the
raised,
world?
the
And that
farm
means
raised
it's
salmon
farmed
will
in China.
will have a tendency to mix with the
Most popular freshwater fish species
wild
farmed in the world.
salmon, and that reduces the quality of the wild salmon, as far as I understand.
Trout?
And it might screw up the return to the correct stream.
Getting
when
there,
it goes
you're
on.
close. It's a big one.
But I don't know so much about that, so some of y'all need to do a paper on that.
It's carp.
All right, so this is,
All right? Carp. This is
Number
kind of
one
just
fish.
graphics
on the same kind
that's
of
fish
stuff.
farmed. And that
Oysters,
includes, I think
believe
that
it or not,
includes
are
common carp as
pretty
well as
high value.
grass carp. Now, I've
Aquaculture.
caught grass carp
And that kind
before,
of makes sense, right?
Like
You ever seen the
large
oyster farms?
grass
They
carp.
have these-
and I
these
ate it.
floating things,
And it wasn't too bad.
Drop these.
If you know how to
lines
cook it
down into the
right.
water.
But
And
anyway, so that's a,
oyster,
aquaculture, one issue
larva,
with salmon farming, of course, is that
rope thing. And so, they're basically filter feeders, so
the farm raised salmon will have a tendency to mix with the
move the
wild salmon,
the
and that
oyster
reduces the
beds
quality of the
around,
wild salmon, as far as I understand it.
of the coast.
And it might screw up the
But
the return
salmon,
to the
in the
correct,
United States, salmon is one of the more important
stream when they go to spawn.
farmed fish species.
But I don't know so much about that, so some of y'all need to do a paper on that.
And this is only marine.
All right, so this is
Fish resources. It's not talking about.
this is kind of just more graphics on the same kind of stuff.
And crawfish.
Oysters, believe it or not, are pretty high
This is
value
just sport fish. I'm not
from
worried about
aquaculture,
that.
and that kind of makes sense, right? You ever seen the oyster farms that they have? these floating things, and they
75% is
just
used-
drop
we've
these
already seen this.
these lines down into the water,
You know all this.
and the oyster, what do you call it, larvae,
Okay, here we go.
are put on this
This is a
rope
graph that
thing.
shows
And so that,
production of
they're
aquaculture.
basically
and
filter
this
feeders,
is
so
for
they
the
you just
entire world
set them out and then
over
come
the
back and
course of
harvest
the
them later.
last, 75
You can even
years
move
or
the
something.
move
So
the oyster
big
beds
thing that you should
around
see is that
into different
aquaculture
parts of
production has
the
taken
coast.
off, and is,
But
approaching-
salmon in the United States, salmon is one of the
producing
more
almost, half
important
of all
farmed
seafood
fish species.
products.
And one of the
But of course, that is very,
this is
very,
only
very
this is only
uneven
marine
geographically.
fish resources. It's not talking
Asia
about
is-
freshwater
So
like
why is
catfish
it?
and
Well, it doesn't include
crawfish.
crocodiles and alligators and caimans. and
This is
seaweed.
just sport fish. I'm
Those
not
are
worried
also
about that.
Or
Okay.
aquatic mammals.
75% is used. We've already seen this. I don't know why.
This is apparent
All this.
consumption is basically the fish utilization, non-food, food, which is kind of hard to see. The
Okay, here we go.
non-food uses are.
This is
the
a
lighter
graph that
blue.
shows production
Food
of
uses the darker
aquaculture,
blue.
and this is for the entire world.
Human population
over the
growth.
course of the last.
So currently,
75 years.
7 billion,
So
7.5 billion,
or
or 7.4 billion,
thing that you should
something
see is that aquaculture production.
So as
is
human
taking off,
population
and
has
is,
increased,
approaching.
well,
producing
what does this
almost,
tell you?
half of
the role of
seafood
marine fisheries.
products. But of course, that is very, very, very uneven geographic part. It's Asia that's doing this.
Absolutely.
So
The
why
marine
is it?
fisheries are-
Oh,
are
it
one of
doesn't
those
include crocodiles and alligators.
Really important sources of protein,
Which are also
for
farmed.
a lot of the world. We have
Or aquatic mammals.
you know, in the United States, actually, we've even increased our consumption.
This is
of fish.
apparent consumption
But
is basically
it's
the
a-
fish utilization.
It's kind of a lifesaver, and
non-food
particularly
food,
aquaculture
which is kind of hard to
has
see.
been kind of a lifesaver
The
for
non-food
food production
uses are the
much of Asia, especially East Asia.
Food uses the darker
Southeast Asia.
blue. Human population.
All right, which countries are most important in terms of marine
Currently,
fisheries?
7 billion, 7.5 billion, or 7.4 billion, something like that. So as human population.
Well, this is ranked,
has increased.
and it's ranked
Well,
by
what does this tell you about
production,
the role
tons,
of
and
marine
the-
fisheries?
What is it? The change between 2015, 2016, or the variation. But from
Absolutely.
2015,
The marine
2016, you
fisheries
see
are-
China, of
were
course,
one of those
Indonesia,
really important sources
is a huge one, and then
of
the
protein.
United States. This is in
For a lot of the world, we have, in the United States, actually, we've even
But of course,
increased
those are
our consumption
those are
of
very
fish.
very, very large
But
countries.
It's a
Very populous countries.
It's kind of a lifesaver.
Indonesia
Particularly
is
aquaculture
part of the-
has been kind of a lifesaver for food production.
It's in the top 10.
Much of Asia,
Much of the
especially East
population.
Asia and Southeast Asia.
But India.
All right, which countries are most important in terms of marine fisheries?
Malaysia come in here. So these are, India's going to have as well some fish farming.
Well, this is
Ranked trends, and it's ranked
here we go.
by
Production,
tropical
tons,
versus temperate versus
and
upwelling. What's upwelling?
Is it the change between 2015 and 2016?
Upwelling refers to the occurrence on
2015,
west sides of
2016, you can
continents,
see China,
usually in temperate areas,
Indonesia
where
is a huge one, and then the United States. This is
there
in
is some
production,
sort of
right?
force that tends to pull
But of course, those are
currents
Those are very-
away from
very
the coast,
large countries.
surface currents. Usually that's a wind pattern.
Indonesia
The
is
surface
like
currents will move away from the coast, and upwelling is what
The top 10.
is produced from that.
in terms of population.
The cold, nutrient-rich waters
India
from the
and,
deep sides. And I say the west sides of continents
Malaysia,
because
so these are
the west sides of
India's
continents will
gonna
typically have
well some
fairly deep waters
farming.
close to the coast. and
Trends.
that upwelling
Oh, there we go.
effect brings up nutrients.
Tropical
which then
versus
supports
temperate
very
versus
large
upwelling. What's upwelling?
shoals of food fish, and as a result,
Upwelling
large
refers to
populations of
the
fish
occurrence
that are
on
important
the
to
west sides of continents, usually the temperate
marine
areas.
fisheries. The
where,
best example of upwelling, that one that is very
there is a
cyclical,
some sort of
is the
force
upwelling
that
areas
tends
off the
to
coast of the
pull,
western coast of northern South America. Or I could just say the western coast
pull
of South
currents
America.
away from
The
coast.
fisheries
The
of
surface currents.
Ecuador and Peru
Usually
and
that's a
Chile
wind pattern.
are
The surface currents will move away from the coast.
at times
and
very, very
upwelling is what,
abundant.
when there
Is
is from that,
upwelling
the,
taking place.
the cold,
sometimes-
nutrient-rich waters
sometimes
from-
due to,
from the deep sides. And I say the west sides of
referred
continents
to as El
because
Niño.
the west sides of
The,
continents will typically
so
have
it's referred to as the
fairly
southern
deep
oscillation
waters
between El
close to
Niño
the
and El
coast.
Niño. What that
And
does is it
that
throws off the
upwelling effect
currents, the
brings
surface
up
currents.
nutrients, which
So
then
the-
supports
the
very large
general surface currents that would be flowing
shoals of food
east to
fish,
west get weakened,
and
and that
as a result,
what that does is it
large
weakens the
populations of
upwelling
fish
phenomenon,
are important.
and therefore the fishery tends to collapse.
The best example of
So,
upwelling, that
most
one
of
that
the
is
world's
very,
sardines come from
cyclical, is
Sardines
the
generally come from
upwelling
the west
areas off
coast.
the coast of the western coast
But
of
it
northern
fluctuates
South America.
quite a bit.
Or
You can
just
see
say the
from,
western coast of
basically
South
year to
America.
year, there's going to be
The fisheries
Up and
of
down
Ecuador,
trends.
Peru, and Chile are
tropical areas. Well, how would you characterize?
at times very, very
long-term
abundant
trend,
when
right,
there is
that
upwelling taking
areas
place.
seem to be
But
being
sometimes-
reduced in terms of their fisheries.
sometimes due to
They're heavily fished areas.
what's referred to as El Nino. The
Tropical areas seem to be
what's
going up.
referred to as the southern oscillation between
And
El
that may have
Nino
to
and
do
La
with the
Nina.
market.
What that does is it
For,
throws off the currents, the surface currents.
And the tropical
So the
regions of
general
Asia
surface currents that would
have
be
been
flowing
increasing their fish catch.
east to west get
And
weakened.
then the temperate
That-
areas,
that-
well, they're,
what that does is it
kind of
weakens
flat,
the
I guess you can say.
upwelling phenomenon, and therefore
Temperate, and these would include
the fishery tends to collapse.
the cold waters
So,
of the North Atlantic and the North
most
Pacific.
of the world's
as well as
sardines
the
come
South
from that area.
and the Atlantic.
Sardines generally come from the west
Ocean.
coast. But it
What are some
fluctuates
cold water
quite a
species?
bit. You can see from
Well, we've already talked.
year to year, there's going to be up and down trends.
World aquaculture production. of
Tropical
food,
areas,
fish, and aquatic
well, how would you
plants.
characterize, well, I guess the long-term trend, right?
So here you have
is that upwelling areas
crustaceans,
seem to be
shrimp,
being reduced.
inland
in terms of their
crustaceans,
They're heavily fished areas.
crawfish and stuff. Marine and coastal
Tropical
crustaceans,
areas seem to
shrimp.
be going up.
Mollusks.
So that may have to do with the market,
mostly be clams and
for,
oysters. And then finfish,
the tropical
inlet and finfish
regions of
marine
Asia
and coastal.
have been
So you see,
increasing.
what is,
their fish
how would you,
catch.
and then
And then the
aquatic
temperate
plants
areas,
would be seaweed.
kind of flat, I guess you would say.
Seaweed's primarily the Japanese.
Temperate, and these would
Asian
these would
thing.
include the.
Although
the
they are,
cold waters
they are
of the
producing
North
more of it in
Atlantic,
California
Pacific,
now, right?
as well as the South
And it's in fact
Atlantic,
been,
South Indian Ocean.
it's been thrown around as a,
What are some cold water species? Well, we
potential,
already talked about that, I guess.
fuel, I think. Is that what it was? Okay.
World aquaculture
Anyway,
production of
but look
food,
at the
fish,
big
and
change
aquatic
in
plants.
inland finfish.
So here you have
So these are
crustaceans,
freshwater
the
fish,
shrimp,
right?
or
Now,
inland
I can tell you,
crustaceans, which
way before you
are
got here,
crawfish and stuff.
At OSU,
Marine and coastal
probably-
crustaceans, shrimp,
Yeah.
mollusks,
Down about 10
mollusks.
years ago.
So that would
The best place to
mostly
to
be
get
clams
catfish
and
still water
oysters.
was this little place
and
on the
then
strip,
finfish,
and it was
inland and
uh,
finfish,
I
marine
think they
and
still have a
coastal.
grocery store.
So you
over
see,
on
what
Main
is,
Street.
how would you,
It's an Asian
and
grocery.
then aquatic plants would be seaweed,
But it was
seaweed.
called-
right?
what's the name of that place?
Seaweed's primarily Japanese,
Anyway,
Asian
there was
thing.
this little tiny place on the.
although they are
South
they
end
are
of the
producing more of it
strip.
in California now. right?
And
and
it
it's
was
in fact
run
been
by
it's been
Chinese guy, I think.
thrown around as a
and they had
potential,
catfish I've ever had in my life, fried catfish. And I'm from
fuel, I
Mississippi,
think.
so
Is that what it was?
I don't like catfish,
Okay.
but This
Anyway,
is a,
but look at the big
this is
change
one of those
in
fish.
inland
And
finfish.
You didn't use farm raised
These
like
are-
channel cat.
these are freshwater
from the United
fish.
States. You used sway. You know
Now,
what sway
I can
is?
tell you, way before you got
SWAI,
here
I think.
at
It's
OSU,
a really large
probably,
Asian catfish. But
it closed down about 10
fantastic.
years ago.
Um,
The best place
fantastic fish.
to get catfish in Stillwater was
So
this
that's
little
one of
place on the
those
strip.
many large
And it was,
freshwater, food
I
fish.
think they still have a grocery store over on Lewis Street. It's an Asian grocery. But it was called, what was the name of that
The
place?
Asian market. That's it. I mean, that's the guy.
Anyway,
He quit the
but it was this
restaurant
little
because
tiny
he wanted
place
to
on the,
focus
on the south end of the strip.
What was it called?
And
What was it called?
it made,
It was the name of a
it was
plant.
run by a Chinese guy, I think.
Yeah, it was,
And they had the best catfish I've ever had in my life, fried
Right.
catfish. And I'm from Mississippi, so
I know my catfish.
this is
hard to get.
this is one of those fish. And he
And-
didn't use farm raised like channel
Trends
cat from the
across
United
the
States.
world, different
He
regions
used
here.
sway. You know what sway
Aquaculture,
is?
Look at the
SWAI, I think.
Or at least North America.
It's a
Americans.
really large Asian
What's going on with
catfish.
Aquaculture,
But
hardly anything.
fantastic fish.
World,
So
Americas.
that's one of those many
Blue is aquaculture
large
as a percentage.
freshwater food
capture
fish, or
fish coming
aquaculture
down.
fish.
The share of the consumption.
The Asian market. That's it. I mean, that's the
Aquaculture fish is going
guy.
up.
He quit the restaurant because he wanted to focus on the
So
on
if you
the
look at
grocery store.
the entire world.
What was it
excluding
called?
China,
What was it called?
Well,
it was the name of a plant.
more and more aquaculture is supplying fish. If you
Yeah,
look
it
at
was.
China. Let's see.
Oh man. Okay.
China,
Anyway,
here you go.
I wish
Look
it could
at
come
China.
back and open up again. It was
Vast
fantastic. It was hard to get
majority of all fish
a table
is
at lunch.
aquaculture.
Anyway,
And,
trends across the world,
producing
different
more and more
regions
food,
here
but
in terms of
aquaculture is actually
aquaculture.
growing in share.
Look at the United States,
I thought it was
or at least North America, the
in
Americas.
the world, of course, this is
What's
being
going on with
driven by
aquaculture?
China, but
Hardly anything.
It seems like the United States ought to be able to catch up with that. Why do you suppose their blue is aquaculture as lag in the United States with capture fish coming down, the share of the consumption of aquaculture fish is going up? You suppose it would be, so if you look at the entire world, excluding China, money-making enterprise to more and more aquaculture flying fish. If you look at China, food fish and aquaculture in the United States versus importing in China. Most of this, a lot of the imported stuff is aquaculture. A majority of all fish is aquaculture.